going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 32 of the Downtown Browntown podcast. I'm your host, Downtown Brown. Today, we're going to discuss the disappointing game one loss for the Milwaukee Bucks, falling to the Brooklyn Nets, 115 to 107. And we'll discuss everything that is trending around Bucks Twitter and just things that I saw in the game and what we need to see going forward throughout the series. Again, before we get started, just want to make sure, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well. Twitter, I'm at downtown_Brown, and Instagram, I'm at downtown_Brown33, all lowercase for both of those handles. So let's get right into it. Again, Bucks fall 115 to 107 to the Brooklyn Nets. I got what I wanted in terms of a starting lineup perspective for the Bucks. PJ Tucker slides into that starting position for the injured Dante DiVincenzo. I really like the move by Coach Bud there. Might be one of the only moves I liked from Coach Bud throughout this game. We'll get into the coaching a little bit later on. But again, I thought PJ Tucker made a nice impact, especially early on in that game. He was tasked with guarding Kevin Durant, and they had Giannis early on Kyrie Irving, which was very, very surprising to me. Did not expect that whatsoever. I didn't mind it at all. I think that was a nice tactic for Coach Bud to implement coming into the series with the Nets' big three. And then we still saw Drew on James Harden. But as we all know, James Harden gets hurt 43 seconds into the game, hurts his right hamstring that caused him to miss 21 games at the end of the regular season. And he came back with maybe 2 or 3 regular season games and has played every playoff game until last night, where he was forced to exit 43 seconds in. He did not return the rest of the game. He left the arena, got an MRI, and obviously we'll see what happens with James Harden going on in the rest of the series here. There's definitely a chance that he could be back tomorrow night for game 2. There's also a chance he could be out the rest of the series. It's really hard to say. Hamstring injuries are really hard to completely or fully recover from, and we clearly saw that. James Harden just took a weird step. It didn't really look like anything happened. Like, no one hit him or anything like that. It's just he went up for a pass and landed on his right leg and something just tightened up or whatever. So obviously hate to see that. Don't want to see any guys get injured in the league, but obviously advantage to the Bucks if James Harden is going to miss any more time in the series, and should have also been an advantage in that game. But obviously it was not, because the Bucks weren't able to take advantage of that opportunity of James Harden going down 43 seconds in the game. Still mind-blowing, to be honest. Couldn't believe it. Still can't. But again, so PJ Tucker gets the start for the Bucks here. I thought he made a nice impact. 7 points quickly on for PJ, and played some pretty solid defense on Kevin Durant. I mean, obviously Kevin Durant had a great game, and he's going to get his. It's just what happens, I mean, PJ Tucker is a lot shorter than Durant. He's like 6'5", Durant 6'11", so it's going to be tough for him to completely stop him, but he was really getting tight on him and making things a little more difficult for him. But KD was still getting to his spots. He's going to look to pull up from that mid-range spot a lot of the times and just, get his shot over PJ Tucker. It pretty much is going to be able to happen every time, and he's pretty much able to knock those down at will. Kevin Durant, 29 points, 12 for 25 from the field, 10 boards, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks. So, I mean, 12 for 25, not terrible from the Bucks' perspective defensively. I mean, you'll take that. Under 50% from the field. He was 1 for 4 from 3 as well, so 25% there. I mean, got to be happy with the Bucks' quote-unquote defense on Kevin Durant in this game. But again, he obviously played well, and Kyrie and Durant combined really step up when James Harden was forced to leave that game early on. Kyrie Irving, 25 points, 11 for 26 from the field, 3 of 11 from 3, 5 boards, 8 assists, a steal, and a block. So not the most efficient night from Kyrie Irving whatsoever, but still he was able to make things difficult for the Bucks on the defensive end. And again, still posted a pretty good game. But again, from efficiency perspective, under 50% from the field, very bad percentage from 3 for Kyrie. So you got to be happy with what the Bucks did in terms of how they defended the big three. But pretty much all the other defense that the Bucks executed was pretty poor in this game. So let's just go ahead and dive into, you know, the game by game breakdown and just some things that went wrong and what we need to expect going forward, or what we need going forward. So you know, the Bucks obviously did not shoot well in this game. 6 for 30 from three, that's 20%, and 45 from 101 for the field, 44.6%. Not terrible, but definitely not great. Obviously, the 3-point percentage was very poor. Free throw line as well, 11 for 19, 58% from the free throw line. Giannis 0 for 3 from the free throw line. Jrue Holiday misses 2 early free throws. Chris Middleton missed 1. I mean, just not going to get it done from the free throw line. And really the shooting performance that the Bucks had in game 1 of this series very well resembles the shooting performance they had against Miami in game 1 of that series. Obviously the Bucks were able to pull that one off in overtime, but you know, we're not going to be able to play a game. We're not going to be able to win these games where we play bad, shoot poorly, and beat the Brooklyn Nets, because they are a far superior team than the Miami Heat. It's not even close, to be honest. So Bucks get away with one against Miami, and it was at home as well, but they're not going to get away with playing as poorly as they did and shooting very ineffectively and be able to beat this Brooklyn Nets team, because they're just an offensive juggernaut. And, you know, 107 points by the Bucks. If I would have saw that, you know, coming into the, like, if I would have known coming into game 1, the Bucks are going to score 107, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a loss for sure. You're not beating the Brooklyn Nets when you score 107 points. And that's just what it is. You know, them scoring 115, not terrible from the Bucks. Obviously, it could be a lot worse than that. We've seen them put up games of 140 against the Boston Celtics, but obviously the Bucks much better on the defensive end than Boston. So again, you know, 115, not ideal, not great, not terrible, but I think the Bucks got to be better offensively and defensively if they want a chance in this series. So, you know, early on, once James Harden kind of went out, we saw the Bucks played well. They went on a nice, I think, 13-2 run early on in that first quarter with Brook Lopez just dominating in the paint. I mean, overall, Brook had a great game. He was really one of the only 2 Bucks that played fairly well in this game, both him and Giannis, I would say. PJ played pretty well, but I'm not going to give him a fairly well or a very well performance like we saw from Giannis and Brook Lopez. Brook had 19 points, 8 for 11 from the field. He missed his only 3-pointer of the game, 3 for 3 from the free throw line, 5 boards, 1 assist. So, I mean, you got to give props to Brook Lopez. He came to play, one of the only 2 Bucks that really, really performed well in this game. And quite honestly, we need to use Brook Lopez a lot more in this series. I mean, Brook logged 28 minutes in the game. That's not enough. I mean, for me, we've got to see either Giannis or Brook in the game at all times. You know, obviously the one thing that the Nets really don't have going well for them is their size. The Bucks have a huge size advantage in this series, and they need to take advantage of that. They need to exploit the weaknesses of the Nets, and they just did not do that enough in game 1 of this series. And it's one of the main reasons why they couldn't pull this one out. I mean, like I said earlier on, Brook Lopez was dominating in the paint, played really, really well, and just we would lob it up to him. All you got to do is just get a successful entry pass to Brook. I know it can be hard at times because they're trapping him and doubling him down there. We saw a couple of those get deflected and ultimately stolen by the Nets. But again, just get a successful entry pass in there, and Brook is most likely going to score in the paint. They don't have any answers for him. Blake Griffin cannot guard Brook Lopez. No way whatsoever. Obviously, Nick Claxton made an impact in this game. He defended Giannis fairly well, but he can't guard Brook Lopez either. He's too slender. He's got some size, but definitely has some athleticism. But again, he's not going to be able to guard Brook Lopez in the paint. So, you know, especially in that starting lineup, Brook has got to see a lot of opportunities on the offensive end. And same with Giannis, too. I liked what I saw earlier on. Giannis got some really easy dunks, just some really nice plays where we got him open, cutting to the basket, and he just dunked it because he was wide open, basically. So, you know, Bucks came out with a solid game plan on the offensive end in the first quarter, but obviously weren't shooting well at all. But, you know, after the first quarter, Bucks are up 2. I thought it should have been more, especially, with the Harden injury. I thought that was just going to sway things a little bit more in the Bucks' favor, but obviously it didn't. Still holding a 2-point lead after the first, so not bad. In the second quarter, obviously things just didn't go well at all for the Bucks. They lost the quarter by 4, so they were only trailing by 2 after half, which really felt fortunate, especially that we got that Brook Lopez and 1 as time expired at the end of the second quarter. So, it felt like the Bucks should have been down more because they did not play well in the second quarter whatsoever. I mean, Chris Middleton, we'll start with him. Just a really, really bad performance for Chris. 13 points, 6 for 23 from the field, missed all 5 of his 3-pointers, 1 for 2 from the free throw line. He had finished with 13 boards, which is great, but 4 assists. I mean, just a terrible offensive performance from Chris. Just couldn't knock down any of those shots that we're accustomed to him making in the mid-range, especially, and also from 3. I mean, Chris just couldn't get it done in this game, and I don't expect that to continue. Obviously, we know that Chris Middleton has been inconsistent in his NBA career, but he played extremely well in that Miami series. He's played fairly well all season, and he especially played well against the Nets in the regular season. So I expect Chris to bounce back, and I don't see him going 0 for 5 from 3 again, 6 for 23 from the field. I mean, especially in that second quarter, he was just missing shots consistently and just couldn't get any rhythm on offense. I also thought that the Bucks shot selection in the game was piss poor. Taking early shot clock threes. This is something that always drives me nuts. I mean, if you're wide open, then yeah, go ahead. But when they're just taking these off the dribble, like early shot clock threes, we saw a couple from Chris, from Drew. Jeff Teague did one, I think, in the second or third quarter, which was, I think it was the third, which that was a joke. I just don't get it. It's not efficient offense. Like I said, a lot of resemblance from the game one against Miami in this game. The Bucks just didn't move the ball around much on offense. A lot of isolation and just bad shot selection. And I just don't understand that. Like, we need to get Giannis moving on pick and rolls. Have Chris get moving on pick and rolls as well. Obviously a lot of the shots the Bucks took were contested shots and they just weren't falling. Some of them were good looks as well, but we can get ourselves better looks than that. We need to move the ball. Guys need to move off the ball on the offensive end, get the ball moving and get guys some good looks. I just didn't think that we did that at all in this game, to be honest. I mean, we were force feeding Bryn Forbes early on in the game as well. He had some tough shots that he's made before, but we can get better looks than that. I mean, Bryn did not play well at all. 22 minutes, 5 points, 2 for 8 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3. I mean, he just wasn't effective at all in this game. And I thought they were force feeding him too much. I mean, I understand that he was very hot in the series against the Heat, and we wanted to keep that going into the series, but you got to get him some better looks than that. And I just don't think that the looks that he got were anything to be excited about. And obviously they weren't falling for him at all in this game. So again, just really from the second quarter on, I thought the Bucks shot selection was very, very bad. And I just don't get why we revert to this isolation basketball, not moving at all on offense. I mean, I was just watching the Hawks game before I started recording here, and they move the ball around so much, pass up good shots for great shots. It's like, this is what the Bucks need to do on a game by game basis. And we've seen it throughout pretty much the whole Heat series besides game 1 and a lot of the regular season as well. But I just don't understand what the game plan was on offense, or if we just weren't executing it at all, because clearly we just weren't getting good shots up. Giannis as well. I thought he was trying to isolate too much as well. Like, I hate the plays where Giannis just dribbles at the top of the key for like 5 seconds or so to start, doesn't move at all, and then he either takes a 3 or he just takes a lot of time in the shot clock and just puts up a bad shot. It's like, I love Giannis having the ball, obviously, but we need to get him in better positions to score the ball on offense. Like we saw in the first quarter, get him involved in pick and rolls, have him moving around on the offensive end, swing the ball around, make it harder for the Nets defense to stay in front of all of our guys and get Giannis cutting to the basket. I mean, like, we have the size advantage. We need to be dominating the paint in this series. I mean, obviously the threes weren't falling. and we still need to continue to shoot them. But again, the Bucks need to take advantage of the Nets' weaknesses and really dominate the paint, and they just did not do that consistently through this game. I don't see. Giannis was 2 for 5 from three. I mean, he was 16 for 24 for the game, 34 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks. I mean, Giannis played well, and he could have played a lot better too, which is crazy to say. And he still put up 34 points in 35 minutes in this game and shot efficiently from the field, 2 for 5 from three. I don't want to see him shooting 5 3-pointers a game in this series. They're just wasted possessions. I know he was 2 for 5, 40%. Crazy enough, he was our best 3-point shooter in this game from a percentage perspective, which is just terrible. Giannis should not be the highest percentage 3-point shooter in any game, really. But again, where Giannis is just isoing at the top of the key and just getting up bad shots, they're wasted possessions. We have to limit and neutralize the wasted possessions against this Nets team, because we all know they can just score at will, and it's just very hard to stop them. And the Bucks really need to capitalize on offense and dominate the paint, and they just didn't do that enough in this game. Again, let's talk about Jrue Holiday a little bit. Not the best game for Jrue as well, really on both sides of the ball. 17 points for Jrue in 37 minutes, 7 for 19 from the field, 2 of 7 from three, 1 of 3 from the free throw line, 9 boards, 6 assists. Just a tough game for Jrue. I mean, he really hasn't shot well from three at all this postseason, which is obviously a concern. But again, there were some shots, little bunnies that he had in the paint that weren't falling for him. A couple just rimmed or rolled around the rim and just couldn't fall. I mean, there were definitely some shots he should have made in the paint that would have made his percentage a lot better, but still just a tough game for Jrue. I thought he took some really tough shots. Some of those step backs are just, he can hit them, and we've clearly seen that. But again, those aren't the shots we want to see our guys take in this series. We need to get more efficient shots up at the basket. And again, Jrue, I think, just forced things a little bit at times. And I like to see him aggressive. I really do. I think he's got a big advantage if Kyrie Irving is defending him. He's way stronger than Kyrie, and he can back him down and get into the paint at will, which we saw in this game. But again, he was just having a hard time finishing at the rim. And he did not shoot well from three. 1 for 3 from the free throw line as well. We continually see Jrue get worse at the free throw line, which is definitely a concern for the Bucks. But again, I thought it was just a tough game for Jrue on the offensive end and the defensive end. We'll get to the defense from the whole team a little bit later here. I'm just going to focus on offense to start here. But again, just didn't like what I saw from Jrue really on offense. And I think he can play better. And I really know he will in game 2. So again, we touched on Brook Lopez. PJ Tucker, he logged 28 minutes, 7 points, 2 for 5 from the field, 1 of 4 from three, hit both of his free throws, 4 boards, an assist, 2 steals. Again, you're not going to get much from PJ Tucker on the offensive end. A lot of corner threes for the most part, maybe a couple shots in the paint. That's about it for him. But, offensively, not much to talk about from PJ Tucker. We all know his impact comes on the defensive end, and we'll get to that a little later here. Now let's talk about the bench. The bench gave us absolutely nothing from an offensive perspective. Your leading minutes guy, again, I touched on Bryn Forbes already, 22 minutes, 5 points for him. Not going to get it done. He just made an absolutely zero of an impact in this game. Again, like we saw in game 1 of the Heat series, I don't expect this to continue. I think Bryn can step up and start making shots for this team. But, when Bryn Forbes is struggling, it hurts this Bucks bench, because he's really that spark plug that can really tip games like we saw in the Miami series. So still want to see Bryn, letting it fly from the 3-point line. But again, just a tough game for him. Let's touch on Pat Connaughton next. 20 minutes for Pat, 3 points, 1 of 2 from the field, missed his only 3-pointer, 1 for 1 from the free throw line, 4 boards, an assist, a steal, and a block for Pat. First things first, 20 minutes for Pat Connaughton, too much against this Nets team. I do not want to see him playing 20 minutes in any other game in the series. I still think he should be around that 10 to 12 minute per game mark. I don't see why Pat was playing 20 minutes in this game. I mean, he just doesn't really make much of an impact in this series. I think he can defend decently well at times against guys like a Joe Harris. You sprinkle on Kyrie Irving a little bit at times and struggled like most guys do. But again, obviously nothing really to talk about for Pat Connaughton offensively. Didn't really give you anything in 20 minutes, which is just a lot of minutes for a guy who's really not going to provide much offensively. And I hope to see his minutes reduced because he's just really not going to give us much in the series. I've been a Pat supporter all year. I still am, but I don't see how he's going to be able to make much of an impact in the series unless he's knocking down threes, which he wasn't. And, I hope to see his minutes reduced going forward. Bobby Portis next up, 17 minutes for him, 6 points, 3 for 7 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3, missed his only free throw as well, 7 boards, 1 steal for Bobby. I thought defensively, we're talking offense here. Offensively, he was okay. I really didn't like that early shot clock 3 that he took when he was trailing Brook Lopez, who was at the top of the 3-point line. He just kind of shovel passed it back to Bobby Portis, and he just jacks up a 3. Like, that's just a bad shot. Wasted possession. Didn't really like that. I thought Bobby did pretty well in the paint. Obviously, he was 3 for 6 from the 2-pointers. So not a bad game for Bobby Portis offensively. 17 minutes for him. I'm good with that. I don't have much of a issue with it. We'll talk overall minutes and rotation later on as well. But again, offensively, not too much to talk about from Bobby Portis. Just an okay game. I'd like to see him getting some more open 3-pointers and just the Bucks utilizing him better on offense, trying to get him moving a little bit more so he can get open and hit those threes like we've seen him do all season. So overall, just an okay game from Bobby Portis offensively. Jeff Teague's next, 14 minutes for him, 2 points, 0 for 2 from the field, 1 board, 1 assist. Tough game for Jeff. That 1 3-pointer he took was an early shot clock 3 when Giannis was boxing out, or he was sealing off, I think it was Blake Griffin, and he clearly wanted the ball in the paint, and Jeff Teague just pops an early 3, wasn't even close. That was bad. It really was. I'm fine with Jeff Teague getting some minutes. Again, I think it should be like give him 4 to 5 minutes earlier on in the game, probably sometime in the second quarter, see how he does. If he's struggling, I'd probably just go away from him. But if he's playing well, then give him some opportunities. We'll touch on him a little defensively later on. But again, Jeff Teague, he had a tough game. He only shot 2 shots, but just not giving you anything offensively. And I'd really like to see him driving more and trying to create open shots for other guys. He still got his quickness. I mentioned that in the preview of the series podcast. But again, just tough game for Jeff Teague. Don't want to see any early shot clock 3s from him ever again in this series. I still think that he could play a role and still get some minutes for this team. A lot of people on Twitter are hoping that Teague doesn't get a single minute in this series again. They are really disappointed with his performance, and I'm with them to a certain extent. I don't think I'm fully there. I still think he could play a role in the series as a ball handler coming off the bench. Again, using his quickness to his advantage, driving to the paint, trying to get some guys open in the corners for 3-pointers. I think that's where Jeff Teague can be utilized and actually make an impact. So not a great game for Teague there, but again, I think he can be utilized in the series going forward. Only other guy who played in this game was Thanasis, all garbage time minutes, 4 minutes for him, 1 point, 1 for 2 from the free throw line, didn't put up a field goal in this game, 2 boards, 2 assists. Not much to talk about here. I thought obviously he played pretty well in those minutes. The game was over at that point in time, but he played well defensively, and that's just what Thanasis is going to give you, all energy. And you know what? We'll talk about him later on in the rotation. I think he could actually maybe play a role in this series, a very small one, but we'll touch on that later. Let's talk about the defense now for this team. Like I said earlier, the game plan coming into it was having Drew on Harden, Giannis on Kyrie, and PJ Tucker on KD. I was good with it. I think it was a decent game plan there. Having Middleton chase around Joe Harris, and then having Brook on Blake Griffin. Totally good with that game plan. Obviously, it was put to shambles when James Harden exited the game early on, which obviously should have helped the Bucks, but it really didn't. Might have even threw off their game plan a little bit. We saw a lot of Drew on Kyrie then after after James Harden went out, and then still PJ Tucker on Kevin Durant, which I'm totally good with. And I think that's probably what they'll stay with going forward. That way Giannis can play off the ball. Like we all know he's great at defensively and block some shots. He still guarded Kevin Durant at times in this game, but I think they're going to stick with that similar game plan in game 2 if James Harden is still going to be out for that game. So defensively, again, I thought PJ did fairly well on Kevin Durant. He's going to get his regardless. It's just going to happen. And he did what he could, made it tough for Kevin Durant. Again, he shot under 50% from the field. So that's a win in my books. So again, I thought PJ Tucker played well offensively. He really made an impact early on in the game as well, getting 2 quick steals and just, making things tough. And he really came out with a defensive mentality. And I thought he played fairly well on defense. And I like the game plan from the Bucks really coming into it defensively. But again, there were just a lot of mental lapses on the defensive end, especially in that second quarter. There was one play where Blake Griffin had the ball at the top of the key, or like towards the top corner 3 spot. And we doubled Blake Griffin. It was Pat Connaughton and Bryn Forbes, I'm pretty sure, which ended up leading to a wide open bucket. I think it was by Bruce Brown. Why the hell are we doubling Blake Griffin ever? I just don't understand it. I mean, hats off to Blake. He played really well. I can't fucking stand the guy, to be honest, but he played really well in this game. 35 minutes for him, 18 points, 7 for 13 from the field, hit 4 of 9 from 3-point land, 14 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. I mean, he played really well in this game. He came out with a lot of energy. We saw him dive on the floor a couple times for some loose balls and was able to force jump ball attempts. That first one when Bobby Portis just couldn't freaking hang on to the ball. It's like, come on, man. We got to hang on to the ball on these easy rebounds. It's just frustrating as hell to see something like that. But again, Blake played really well. I still don't think we should ever double him. Like, why? Why would you double him, especially when he's not towards the basket? It's a wasted possession on defense. Again, giving them free points makes absolutely no sense. Like little things like that in this game just drove me nuts. But again, Blake played very well. And obviously the Bucks were perfectly comfortable with him taking wide open 3-pointers. Blake hit 4 of 9. He missed I think he missed his first one and then made a couple, airballed one after that. I mean, he was under 50% from 3, but still shot over 40%. So he was still efficient from 3-point land. Do I expect him to hit 4 of 9 from 3 again? I don't. Do I want him just getting wide open 3-pointers? I really don't, to be honest. Like, you got to at least just get up there a little bit. I mean, you can't be afraid of Blake Griffin driving to the basket. I know all the attention is on Kyrie and Kevin Durant and Joe Harris, especially from the 3-point line, but you've got to at least just get up on him a little bit. Like, don't get right in his face and just let him be able to drive or draw a foul. But if he's hitting threes, you can't just give him wide open looks. I just don't get that. Like, the Bucks just are way too comfortable with giving certain guys wide open 3-point looks. And like I said, early on in the game, I'm fine with it. But if he's hitting them, like if he hits 2 out of 4 even, get on the guy. Make it harder for him. Blake doesn't have a lot of quickness anymore. He's not going to be able to drive to the basket as well as he used to when he was on the Clippers. So I just don't understand the game plan from that perspective on the defensive end, specifically for Blake Griffin. Early on, it made sense, but if he's knocking down shots, at least get a hand up on him and make it a little more difficult for him. You're just asking for him to get easy looks from 3-point land. If he's confident, he's going to start knocking them down like we saw in this game. So I just don't love when we do that against guys like Blake, who clearly can hit 3-pointers. I mean, if it's against like an Andre Iguodala, like we saw against the Miami Heat, let him shoot those all day. Like, the percentage is gonna tell itself, and he's not gonna be able to hit many of them. But Blake obviously can hit them, and I just don't get that game plan defensively. So I'm really curious to see how the Bucks approach that in game 2, especially if he's knocking them down early. I hope to see a guy get closer up to Blake and make it more difficult for him and contest those shots at least. So again, I didn't love that at all. Let's talk Jrue Holiday a little on defensively, because I mentioned it early on. I don't think he played very well defensively, especially off the ball. He got lost a few times and just lost his guy, and it led to some easy baskets. And even on the ball, I think Jrue struggled a little bit. Obviously, Kyrie is the best ball handler in the league, second best at that. I mean, that's his absolute lowest between him and Steph Curry. But again, I expect a lot better from Jrue defensively, and I just don't think that he came to play on the defensive end, and he really struggled in this game. And that's just not something that the Bucks can afford to do if they're going to win this series. Jrue Holiday has to be the dominant defender that we've seen pretty much throughout the whole season, and I just don't think that he played well at all, really defensively, specifically off the ball, where he kind of just lost his guy a few times, which led to some really easy shots for the Nets. So again, tough game for Jrue Holiday, both offensively and defensively. So the thing I was really curious coming into this game was how were the Bucks going to do that drop coverage defense? Like we saw in the Miami series, we had a help defender come up when Brook Lopez would drop in the paint, when Bam would screen on Duncan or Goran Dragic. So they weren't getting wide open looks. We still kind of saw that in this series. And I said in my preview pod, I don't think we can get away with that because you can't leave Joe Harris wide open. And that's assuming James Harden was in the lineup. They've got all shooters. And because Blake Griffin would be setting that screen because Brook Lopez is guarding him. So you can't leave any of those guys wide open. Obviously, the Bucks catch a break when Harden goes down and Bruce Brown enters the game and gets a lot of minutes, which I knew he would, even if James Harden was in the game, because he's just an important player for this Nets team. But again, the Bucks are trying to help on that on those high screen and rolls, and we saw KD just take advantage of that a lot of times, whether it was him pulling up from mid range or him passing it to Blake Griffin when he was rolling to the basket. They had a couple really nice plays where they executed that perfectly. And it also led to some open 3-pointers by Joe Harris, which you just can't leave that guy wide open. I mean, he had a solid game. He's got 19 points for Joe Harris, 7-11 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. I mean, that's just what Joe Harris does. Shoots over 50% from 3. The guy's an absolute sniper, so can't leave him open. And the Bucks got to make some adjustments in that drop coverage defense because I think that Brook Lopez got somewhat exposed on the defensive end. Not as badly as I thought it was going to be honest, because sometimes the Nets just weren't hitting those shots. So obviously that's going to make it a little more favorable from the Bucks from a defensive perspective. But again, I think the Bucks are going to have to make some adjustments because the Nets are going to continue to go at Brook Lopez in that drop coverage defense. And one thing I wouldn't mind seeing from the Bucks really is why don't we switch even when Brook was on the court? I think especially when it's against a Kevin Durant, I mean, obviously he's got the quickness on Brook and he's going to try and take him to the basket, but KD loves to take those mid-range shots and get to his spots in the mid-range. And Brook, I mean, yeah, he's slow, but he can still somewhat stay in front of Kevin Durant and get a hand in his face. He's a very large human. I don't think Brook is as bad switching off, like on pick and rolls as everyone thinks he is. And I'm really curious to see if that's something that the Bucks maybe try in this series, is to switch more with Brook Lopez on those screen and rolls. I think he can make more of an impact than people realize. Again, if it's against like Kyrie, then yeah, he's obviously going to get cooked. Who isn't? But again, I just think that schematically, that's something that the Bucks should look at because especially against the Kevin Durant, I think Brook switching onto him can actually bode well for the Bucks in this series and maybe not be as bad as just giving up wide open mid-range shots by Durant or those easy rolling baskets to Blake Griffin at the basket. So again, the drop coverage was not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it obviously was something that the Nets went at right away in this game, and they're going to continue to do that going forward. And it could be even worse for the Bucks in game 2. I think they got off fairly well from that perspective, but I don't expect that to be the case every game. I think the Bucks could just get cooked in any game really in this series. So I really hope adjustments are made there. So again, defensively, I mean, not too much else to talk about for me. I actually thought Jeff Teague played decent on the defensive end, which is kind of crazy. He's not known as the best defender in the world. He's got some decently quick feet. But a couple times he was matched up on Kyrie. I thought he actually defended him really well. Kyrie just made some tough shots, but he kept him in front of him and forced Kyrie to put up some tough fadeaway shots. He's obviously able to make those anytime, but I thought Jeff Teague defensively was actually okay, which is why I don't mind him still getting some minutes in the series, unless he really just doesn't make any more of an impact offensively. Then I think we might have to turn away from him. But again, with Dante being out, other guys are going to have to step up, and I think Jeff Teague can be one of those guys. So I'm not at the extremes that a lot of Bucks Twitter is at right now. I think Jeff Teague can play some valuable minutes for this team in this series, especially because I was actually intrigued from what I saw from him on the defensive end. So again, I thought Jeff Teague actually played okay defensively. Other than that, I mean, Pat Connaughton, Bryn Forbes, Bobby Portis didn't really do much for you defensively at all. I'm going to touch on Thanasis a little bit. I actually think he could maybe play a role in this series just because of the tenacity on the defensive end, and we might need that because if we can't get stops, we're not beating this Nets team. It's just not going to happen. If they're going to be able to score at will, we are losing the series, and probably in a quickly fashion. But, Thanasis is healthy now, coming off that injury that he suffered in the last game of the regular season. And you know what? If things really go bad defensively for the Bucks in game 2, I think Thanasis should actually get an opportunity throughout the rest of the series and just see what he can do. Obviously, he's going to be able to make an impact defensively. He can be a little erratic at times and make some dumb fouls, just being a little too aggressive. But obviously, he's going to play 150% out there and give it his all and make an impact defensively. So I think he actually could play a role in this series. Now, offensively is the reason why I didn't want him playing at all in the playoffs, because he just has nothing on the offensive end. I mean, he could pretty much play that dunker role in the paint, which is about it. He can't shoot at all. He's got no mid-range game whatsoever. You got to get him, cutting to the basket and try to throw him some alley-oops or just give him some easy dunk opportunities. But again, I actually think Thanasis could play a role in this series, and it could happen sooner than later if the Bucks bench just can't make an impact defensively, or really the Bucks from an overall perspective. If they just can't get stops, I think you got to throw Thanasis in there and just see what he can do. We don't really have any other levers to pull on the bench. None of the other guys are going to be getting minutes. They shouldn't be getting minutes. So, Thanasis is that one guy who might actually earn some run in the series, and I'm actually okay with that. So I think game 2 is gonna make that case for us. If the Bucks, play really well and win that game, or even play well and lose it and are able to get some stops, then you probably don't need to go to Thanasis. But if they can't get stops, he's got to play. At least give him maybe a couple minutes and just see what he can do. And if he's not getting exposed, then maybe give him, 10, 12 minutes a game and just try and have him impact the game on the defensive end, because we got to get stops in the series. So that's really pretty much what I've got on the defensive end. I think the Bucks they let them get to the paint too easily. They had a lot of easy looks. Kyrie got to the paint too much. Bruce Brown had some easy baskets at the rim, as did Blake Griffin. Kevin Durant he's just Kevin Durant. He's going to get his. But I thought the Bucks made it a little too easy for the Nets at getting to the paint, and I think they need to do a much better job of that in game 2, especially because that's their MO on defense. They don't want guys getting to the paint, and they're more comfortable giving up wide open 3-pointers. I still don't get that. But again, I think the Bucks got to make it tougher for them, defend without fouling, which they did pretty well in this game. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets only had 9 free throw attempts in this game, which is kind of crazy, to be honest. They made 8 of those. Kyrie did not get to the free throw line once in this game, which is crazy. That's not going to happen again in this series. The Brooklyn Nets are probably going to get more opportunities for free throws in pretty much every other game. So the Bucks did a good job not fouling. I thought the whistle from the refs was pretty fair in this game for the most part. Some bad calls both ways, but when you look at it overall, I don't think the refs made too much of an impact in the game, especially given that the Nets only had 9 free throws. So again, the Bucks got to make it tougher, especially for a guy like Kyrie to get to the paint, because he's just going to finish pretty much all those. And you can't just give these wide open cutting shots to a guy like a Bruce Brown. So again, I just don't think it was a great performance from the Bucks defensively. They just didn't really look like they came to play. Obviously, being off a week probably impacted this a little bit. We had a great rhythm in that Heat series, but being off a whole week, it's tough to come out in these games and just make a huge impact. I mean, we saw in that first game against Miami, again, they just looked sluggish out there on both sides. I mean, their defense was pretty good in that game, but again, That layoff probably did not play to the Bucks' advantage, but you just got to be better than that. Got to be better. And to me, it was just disappointing seeing how the Bucks came out and just didn't really have that energy that we saw in the first round. All right, so now let's get into the minutes allocation and the rotation, because this is the biggest topic out there on Bucks Twitter and just all around in the Bucks community is why aren't the starters, specifically the big three, getting 40 plus minutes a game? Why did they not play more? So Jrue Holiday logs the most minutes, 37. Chris 36, Giannis 35, Brook 28, PJ 28. We'll just start with the starters. So obviously there was like 3 or 4 minutes of garbage time there, but even coming into the fourth quarter, there was no way Giannis could have logged 40 minutes just based on how many minutes he played in the first 3 quarters. That's unacceptable. I just don't get it. I really don't. Giannis needs to play 40 minutes a game. Like, what are we doing here? This just makes no sense. Like, Coach Bud was an absolute joke in this game. He was terrible. I mean, you've got to play these guys more minutes. This is the freaking playoffs. This is against the Brooklyn Nets, a super team. We're trying to win the series to give us a great chance to get to the NBA Finals, having an easier road probably in the third round than in the second round. Like, what the hell are we doing, Coach Bud? I mean, his post-game press conference, he was saying that, all like the big three, they don't want to ever come out, but we've got a deep team and we've got to keep guys fresh. Keep them fresh for what? This is where they need to fucking play. Like, what are we doing here? It doesn't make any sense. Like, what is he saying? Like, how can you say that? Keep them fresh. This is the series that we've all been waiting for. This is the best team we're going to play throughout the whole playoffs. This is when our guys need to be playing these minutes. They want to play. They're ready to go. Like, what the fuck are we doing? We just had a week off too, and we're playing Giannis 35 minutes. What the hell? Like, Coach Bud was just an absolute dumpster fire in this game, and I just don't get it. He did really well coaching in the first round. Giannis played more minutes. His bench rotations were great. He made some really nice adjustments throughout the series, but Bud was just an absolute joke. And if he keeps this up, his ass is getting fired after this series, because we're probably going to lose pretty early on, because these guys need to be playing more. It's just an absolute joke. I don't get it whatsoever. Jrue, Chris, and Giannis need to be playing 40 minutes a game. That's just it. Everyone knows this too. That's why it's so frustrating. Even casual fans who don't really watch the Bucks more. It's like Giannis came out for a couple minutes, I think, in the first quarter, and even like a few in the second quarter. It's like, get him in the game. Don't take him out. Like, yeah, he can't play all 48 minutes, but 40 has got to be the base. 40 to 42, I would say, for Giannis, Chris, and Jrue, pretty much. I just don't get it. God, I'm sorry to get fired up there, but it's just a joke. I just don't understand it. Like, what the fuck is Coach Bud thinking? Like, come on, man. He was obviously a reason we lost this game. Now, the players didn't play that well, but again, his rotations and just having these guys in for or out of the game for long stretches just makes absolutely no sense. I don't get it whatsoever. No one was in foul trouble. Also, like, what are we doing, Coach Bud? If you continue to do this to the series, I mean, there's no chance you are sticking around next year, because we will probably lose this series in that case. He has got to play the big three more minutes in this game. And even Brook Lopez, we'll touch on him now. 28 minutes for Brook, that's not enough. Like I said earlier on, one of either Giannis or Brook should be in the game at all times. Brooklyn has no size. We have the advantage in the paint. We can dominate in the paint. We saw that through stretches of this game. And again, one of them's got to be in at all times. I just don't understand it. Like, we should not have lineups where there's 3 bench guys in the game. There were stretches where Teague, Connaughton, and like Bryn Forbes were in the game altogether. Like, what the hell is that? That can't happen in the playoffs. Like, you've got to have 2 of the big 3 in at all times, and then one of either Brook or Giannis in at all times. And that's just that. Everyone understands this. Like, how the hell does Coach Bud not get this? I just don't get it. Our team isn't even that deep this year either. In years past, I understood it a little bit more. Still didn't make much sense to me. But when we had more of a deep bench, like George Hill and some great guys off the bench in the last 2 years, it made somewhat more sense. But now we don't have a deep team. I mean, yeah, Bryn Forbes is great off the bench. He didn't play well in this game. Bobby Portis has been good all year, but after that, we don't have much on the bench, especially with Dante being out. So how do we have a deep team? I just don't get what Coach Bud is thinking there. I mean, it's just a joke. I just don't get it. Brook should be playing probably 35 minutes in a game this series. I mean, he played really well. Him and Giannis were the only two that played well in this game. PJ Tucker was okay. But again, I just don't get it, man. It just drives me nuts, and I just don't get it. I don't know what else to say about it. It makes zero sense. Again, Pat Connaughton playing 20 minutes, Bryn Forbes 22. I'm fine with that. But when he's not making shots, it's tough to give him that many minutes. Again, give the starters more minutes. And here's another stat that I found interesting. The Bucks starters played 13 minutes together in the game. What the hell is that? Like, what are we doing? 13 minutes for the starters? And we won those minutes by 3 points. What are we doing? Our starters that's our best defensive lineup. That's our best lineup probably in general, unless we're maybe going small and having Bryn Forbes in there or something like that. But in this series, we really shouldn't be going small. So I'll take that back. This is our best lineup. Maybe you could switch out PJ for Bryn Forbes for a more offensive lineup. But again, our starting five is our best lineup. 13 minutes for them? What the fuck is that? Like, I just don't get it. And we won those minutes by 3 points. Like, what are we doing, coach? What are we doing? Man. I'm going to be so frustrated if this is one of the reasons why we lose this series. I don't get it. I really don't. I don't know what else to say at this point. I've ranted about it enough. Feels somewhat good to get it off my chest because I'm still pissed off about it right now as we speak today. So I just don't get it. Coach Bud's got to be better. He's got to get his rotations better. Got to have two of the big three in at all times. Brook or Giannis in at all times. PJ, our starting five needs to play more minutes together. It just makes no sense. Coach Bud, you got to be better or your ass is getting fired. All right. Had to get that one off my chest, but again, kind of felt good. Still pissed off about it, but we're going to carry on here. So let's just talk a little bit of the projection of the series going forward. Is it over? No, it's not over. It's one game. We can't overreact to one game. If the Bucks take game 2, we are in great shape to win the series, and we're just going to have a much better position to be in the series and make it competitive. I really think if we can get this series to 2-2 after 4 games, it's anyone's series, especially with the status of James Harden being unknown at this point. I don't know if he's going to play another game in this series. I mean, those hamstring injuries they linger. They don't go away. I mean, I think he's probably going to be back at some point, but I would be surprised if he plays game 2. That's just my prediction, but I'm not a doctor, so watch me be wrong and he's out there in game 2. But is he going to be the same James Harden? I wouldn't think so, but obviously we don't know that. But again, we're not out of the series. You know, I think the Bucks can play much better. They're obviously not going to shoot that poorly again. At least I don't think they will. And there's a lot of things to clean up from both sides of the ball. The Bucks just didn't have a lot of energy as well. And I think that they can play much better in this series and in game 2, and they could definitely win game 2 and come back to Milwaukee and have home court advantage throughout the series. So it's not over. Can't panic. I'm not happy about the performance. I think that's a game that, especially when James Harden goes out early on, you've got to take advantage of that opportunity. And even though the Bucks played poorly in this game, they were still hanging in there. I thought after the third quarter it was over, you know, when KD hits that 3-pointer to go up 16 and then Brook got a basket to make it 14 after 3. I didn't think we were going to win the game after 3 quarters, but throughout most of that third quarter when we were still playing poorly, I thought the Bucks were still hanging in there, still had a chance to win the game. So as poorly as we played, we still could have won that game, and it just sucks that we couldn't win that one because that's just an opportunity you've got to take advantage of when James Harden goes out 43 seconds into the game. Like, that still blows my mind that happened. Again, I just think the Bucks missed a big opportunity there, and the Nets capitalized, and they played extremely well. And the Bucks did not. So I don't think it's over. I still think the Bucks can win game 2 and come back 1-1 and take both games in Milwaukee and really take control of the series. But am I losing a little bit of confidence? Somewhat. You know, I still think we can win it for sure, but we've got to play better in game 2. We've got to play better. And I think that we still have a chance, even if we lose game 2. We still got 3 games in Milwaukee. You know, if we take both games 3 and 4, obviously we've got a chance to win that series. But again, it's not over. Can't panic. Just got to hang in there a little bit and hope that we come to play in game 2 and just got to be better. and specifically you, Coach Bud. So get your ass together. That's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will have a video post-game review of Game 2 either that night or sometime Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that. And hope you guys enjoyed this one again. And thanks you guys for watching. And let's hope the Bucks come out for a better performance in Game 2 and take that one and make this a series. So thanks again, guys, and go Bucks.